Reunited after 5 years apart, CEO cries when he sees the twins next to his ex-wife whom he abandoned. The gleaming towers of Manhattan's financial district reflected the setting sun as Clara Harrison straightened her blazer, her heart racing despite years of experience presenting to corporate clients. This wasn't just another pharmaceutical sales pitch. This was Riverside Corporations, the company that had stolen her husband's heart away from their marriage 5 years ago. "Mommy, you look beautiful," Sophia's voice came through her phone speaker, accompanied by Emily's enthusiastic agreement. At 7 years old, the twins had their mother's quiet strength and infectious optimism. "Thank you, my loves. Are you being good for Grandma Rose?" "We're making dinner," Emily announced proudly. Grandma's teaching us her special mac and cheese recipe," Clara smiled, picturing her daughters, matching dark curls bent over the kitchen counter as her mother supervised their cooking adventure. "Save some for me. I'll be home as soon as my presentation's done." After saying goodbye, Clara took one last look in the restroom mirror. Her tailored navy suit complemented her deep brown skin perfectly, and she'd pulled her braids into an elegant updo that projected confidence and professionalism. No one would guess that inside. She was trembling at the thought of possibly encountering Eduardo. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt endless. Clara used the time to center herself, reviewing the presentation that could secure her company's biggest contract of the year. She wouldn't let old wounds derail this opportunity. She had 2 little girls depending on her success. The conference room door opened to reveal a panel of executives, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. There he sat, more distinguished than she remembered, his dark hair now touched with silver at the temples. Eduardo Martinez, the man who had walked away from their marriage to climb the corporate ladder, unaware he was also walking away from his unborn daughters. If he was surprised to see her, he hid it well, but Clara noticed the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his hands clenched briefly before relaxing. 5 years of separation hadn't diminished her ability to read his subtle tells. "Ms. Harrison," the board chairman welcomed her. "Please begin when ready." Clara launched into her presentation, her voice steady despite the weight of Eduardo's gaze. She outlined her company's innovative treatment protocols, their success rates, their commitment to patient care. All the while, she felt the past pressing against her professional facade, memories of shared dreams, broken promises, and the strength she'd found in their aftermath. "Impressive results," Eduardo spoke for the first time, his voice sending unwanted shivers down her spine. But how do you maintain such high patient retention rates?" Clara met his eyes directly. "By never abandoning those who depend on us." The double meaning hung in the air between them, but Clara continued smoothly, fielding questions with practiced ease. By the time she concluded, several board members were nodding appreciatively. "Thank you, Ms. Harrison," the chairman smiled. "We'll be in touch next week with our decision." Clara gathered her materials efficiently, hoping to escape before Eduardo could approach her. She had almost reached the elevator when his voice stopped her. "Clara, wait." She turned slowly, schooling her features into professional neutrality. "Yes, Mr. Martinez, you look well," he said softly, moving closer. "I didn't know you were working with farm care now." "There's a lot you don't know about my life," she replied evenly. "By choice, as I recall." Eduardo flinched slightly at her words. "I've thought about reaching out, about trying to explain." "Don't." Clara's voice was firm but quiet. "It's been 5 years. We've both moved on. Have we?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne. Because seeing you today, I'm not so sure." The elevator dinged, providing a welcome escape. "Goodbye, Eduardo." As the doors closed between them, Clara's hands began to shake. She had known this day might come, had prepared herself for it, but nothing could have readied her for the rush of emotions seeing him again would bring. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Girls want to wait up for you. They've made enough mac and cheese to feed an army." Clara smiled through sudden tears, drawing strength from the thought of her daughters, their laughter, their love, their perfect combination of her features and Eduardo's. They were her miracle, her redemption, her reason for pushing forward when everything fell apart. The cab ride home was a blur of memories and fears. Would Eduardo dig deeper now that they'd reconnected? Would he discover the existence of Emily and Sophia? How could she protect her girls from the pain of rejection if he wasn't ready to be the father they deserved? The lights of their modest Brooklyn brownstone glowed warmly as Clara climbed the steps. Inside, she could hear the twins' excited chatter and her mother's gentle laughter. This was her real life, the one she'd built from the ashes of her marriage, the one she'd protect at any cost. But as she reached for the doorknob, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Eduardo's presence in her life had once meant love, then heartbreak. Now, with two precious lives hanging in the balance, she wondered what his reappearance would bring. The door opened to reveal Emily and Sophia, their faces lighting up at the sight of their mother. As Clara gathered them into her arms, breathing in their sweet, familiar scent, she made a silent promise. Whatever came next, she would ensure their hearts were protected, even if it meant facing the past she'd worked so hard to leave behind. Eduardo Martinez sat in his corner office at Riverside Corporations, staring unseeing at the Manhattan skyline. 24 hours had passed since Clara's presentation, but he couldn't shake the image of her, poised, successful, and more beautiful than his memories had preserved. "Sir," his assistant's voice broke through his reverie. "The board's decision on the farm care contract just came through. They want to move forward." "Thank you, Rachel." Eduardo took the document, noting the contact information listed at the bottom. Clara's business email stared back at him, tempting and forbidden. Against his better judgment, he opened his laptop and typed her name into the search bar. Professional accomplishments filled the screen: promotions, speaking engagements, charity work. Then a local news article caught his eye. "Brooklyn mother of twins leads innovative healthcare initiative." His coffee cup crashed to the floor. The photograph showed Clara at a community health fair, and beside her stood two little girls with familiar features, a perfect blend of his mother's smile and Clara's gentle eyes. The article dated back 2 years, putting their age at— Eduardo's hands shook as he did the math. 7 years old. Conceived right before he'd left for his temporary assignment in London, the assignment that had turned into a permanent choice when he'd chosen ambition over marriage. "Rachel," he called, his voice rough, "cancel my afternoon meetings." The drive to Brooklyn took forever through rush-hour traffic, giving Eduardo too much time to think. How had he not known? Why hadn't Clara told him? The answers, when they came, brought crushing guilt. He'd changed his number, moved continents, thrown himself into work. He'd made himself impossible to reach. The brownstone from the article's photo looked warm and inviting in the early evening light. Eduardo sat in his car, watching as neighbors passed by. Children played on nearby stoops, and life moved in its comfortable rhythm. Then he saw them. 2 little girls in matching school uniforms bounded up the steps, their backpacks bouncing. An older woman, Clara's mother, Rose, though her hair was grayer than he remembered, followed close behind. Their laughter carried across the street, piercing Eduardo's heart. He was about to exit his car when another vehicle pulled up to the brownstone. Clara emerged, looking tired but happy. The twins, excited shouts of "Mommy!" echoed off the buildings as they launched themselves into her arms. Eduardo watched, frozen, as Clara kissed each girl's forehead, checked their backpacks for homework, and ushered them inside. Such a simple, everyday moment, but it represented everything he'd thrown away. His phone buzzed. Rachel, probably with some crisis requiring his immediate attention, but for the first time in 5 years, work felt meaningless compared to what he'd just witnessed. Back in his penthouse apartment that evening, Eduardo poured himself a drink and really looked at the life he'd built. Modern furniture chosen by a decorator, artwork selected for investment value, views that impressed business associates but brought no joy, everything calculated for appearance and success. He pulled up the article again, studying the faces of his daughters. Emily and Sophia, according to the caption. They had his dark hair but Clara's beautiful curls, his height but her delicate features. How many firsts had he missed? First steps, first words, first days of school. The intercom buzzed, announcing his dinner delivery, another solitary meal in a space that had never felt like home. Eduardo ignored it, too consumed by the reality of his choices. His phone lit up with a text from his mother in Miami. "Mijo, you sound troubled. What's wrong?" Eduardo stared at the message, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. How could he tell his mother she had granddaughters she'd never met? That he'd abandoned not just his wife but his own children. "I saw Clara today," he typed back. His mother's response was immediate. And I discovered I have twins. Girls. They're 7. The phone rang seconds later. "Eduardo Antonio Martinez." His mother's voice was sharp with disappointment. "Tell me you didn't know." "I didn't, Mama. Clara was pregnant when I left, but I never knew." His voice cracked. Just I never gave her the chance to tell me. Dios mío. Maria Martinez was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. Clara has every right to hate me, to keep me away from them. But they're my daughters, Mama. I've already missed so much. Then you have much to make up for. His mother's tone softened. It won't be easy. Clara won't trust you, and she shouldn't. Not yet. You'll have to prove yourself worthy of being in their lives. Eduardo moved to his window, looking out at the city lights. How do I even begin? With humility, mijo, and by understanding that this isn't about your feelings or your guilt. It's about what's best for those little girls. After hanging up, Eduardo spent hours researching, parenting books, child psychology articles, anything that might help him understand how to approach this situation. His usual business strategy of swift and decisive action wouldn't work here. This required patience, sensitivity, and a complete reordering of his priorities. Morning found him still awake, a plan forming. He'd start with a letter to Clara, not asking for anything but offering everything: financial support, legal recognition, whatever she deemed appropriate. He'd move forward at her pace, respect her boundaries, prove through consistent actions that he was ready to be the father their daughters deserved. As sunrise painted his sterile apartment in warm hues, Eduardo made his first practical decision as a father. He called his realtor. If he was going to be part of his daughters' lives, he needed to be closer than a Manhattan penthouse. Brooklyn Heights had some excellent properties for sale, including one just a few blocks from Clara's brownstone. His phone buzzed with a meeting reminder, another board presentation, another deal to close. Eduardo stared at it for a long moment before doing something he'd never done in his career. He delegated the entire project to his VP. Some things were more important than business. He just hoped he hadn't realized it too late. Clara stared at the thick cream envelope on her desk, Eduardo's familiar handwriting bringing back a flood of memories. The farm care contract had arrived that morning with a personal letter attached. She'd been avoiding it for hours, focusing instead on client calls and paperwork. "Mom?" Emily's voice carried from the living room where the twins were doing homework. "Can you help me with this math problem?" Grateful for the interruption, Clara left the letter unopened. She found Emily frowning at her textbook while Sophia worked on a science project about butterflies. "What's giving you trouble, sweetie?" Clara settled beside her daughter, noting how Emily's furrowed brow matched Eduardo's expression of concentration. "Fractions," Emily sighed. "They're confusing." Clara spent the next half hour explaining the concept, using pieces of Sophia's construction paper to demonstrate. As she watched Emily's face light up with understanding, she wondered if Eduardo had been good at math, if this aptitude came from him. There were so many things about him she'd never know, details that might explain their daughters, traits and talents. Sophia's gift for languages, Emily's natural grace in dance class. Were these inherited from his side of the family? After tucking the girls into bed with their nightly routine of stories and kisses, Clara finally returned to her home office. The letter waited, innocent-looking, but heavy with potential consequences. Her mother's voice came from the doorway. "You can't avoid it forever, baby." "I can try." Clara smiled weakly. "What if he wants to take them away? He has money, influence, and no legal claim," Rose reminded her gently. "So as you tried to tell him about the pregnancy, he chose to be unreachable." Taking a deep breath, Clara opened the envelope. "Dear Clara, words cannot express my regret and shame at discovering what I walked away from 5 years ago. I saw them yesterday, Emily and Sophia. They're beautiful, perfect. They look so much like you, but I can see myself in them too. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. My choices cost me the privilege of being their father. But I'm writing to offer whatever you think is appropriate: financial support, legal recognition, or simply the knowledge of their family medical history. I've purchased a home in Brooklyn Heights, not to impose myself into your lives, but to be available if and when you decide I can have a role in our daughters' lives. I understand if that never happens. I understand if you hate me. I've included my personal contact information and my mother's. Maria asks me to tell you she would love to know her granddaughters, but only with your blessing. Whatever you decide, please know that I'm deeply sorry for the pain I caused you. You've done an amazing job raising our daughters alone. They're lucky to have such a strong, loving mother. Yours, Eduardo." Clara set the letter down, tears blurring her vision. The Eduardo she'd known had never been this humble, this aware of his failings. "What does it say?" Rose asked softly. Clara handed her the letter, watching her mother's expressions as she read. "He seems sincere, Rose said finally. He left us, Mom. Left me alone when I needed him most. Yes, he did. Rose sat beside her daughter. And nothing can change that. But maybe, for the girls' sake, you should consider letting him try to make amends. The girls are happy. We're happy. Are you? Rose challenged gently. Or are you just safe? Before Clara could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. Mommy, I had a bad dream. Sophia stood there in her butterfly pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Clara quickly wiped her eyes and opened her arms. Come here, baby. As she held her daughter, Clara noticed Sophia eyeing the letter on the desk. At 7, both girls were becoming more observant, more curious about the world around them. How long before they started asking difficult questions about their father? Back to bed, sweetheart, she whispered, carrying Sophia upstairs. In the girls' room, Emily slept peacefully, her dark curls spread across her pillow. Clara tucked Sophia in, kissing both her daughters' foreheads. Back in her office, she found her mother still there, patient and understanding. They're starting to notice things, Clara admitted. Last week, Emily asked why Justin's dad comes to all his baseball games. They're at an age where they'll have more questions, Rose agreed. Don't you want to control how they get their answers? Clara picked up her phone, staring at the contact information Eduardo had provided. What if he disappoints them like he disappointed me? Then you'll be there to help them through it, just like you've been there for everything else. Rose squeezed her daughter's hand. Darcy, but what if he doesn't disappoint them? What if he's really changed? Clara thought about the letter, about the humility it displayed. The Eduardo she'd married had been ambitious, but loving. Somewhere along the way, ambition had consumed everything else. But people could change. She had Yuna becoming stronger than she'd ever thought possible. I need time, she said finally, to think about what's best for Emily and Sophia. Take all the time you need. Rose stood, kissing Clara's forehead. But remember, sometimes protecting our children means giving them the chance to form their own relationships, even if those relationships might bring pain. After her mother left, Clara reread the letter. Then she opened her laptop and began to write. Eduardo, thank you for your letter. You're right. You have no claim to the girls. I tried to tell you about the pregnancy, but you made yourself unreachable. I've spent 7 years protecting them, and I won't stop now. However, they deserve to know their heritage, their family history. They're starting to ask questions that only you can answer. I'm willing to meet with you alone to discuss the possibility of introducing you to their lives, but understand this. It will happen on my terms, at my pace. One wrong move, one broken promise, and the door closes forever. If you're serious about being part of their lives, reply with times you're available to meet. Clara. Her finger hovered over the send button. This decision would change everything. Their comfortable routines, the girl's understanding of family, the careful boundaries she'd built around her heart. She thought of Sophia's questions about butterflies, Emily's struggle with fractions. Of all the moments, big and small, that Eduardo had missed, of all the moments yet to come. Taking a deep breath, Clara pressed send. Clara chose a quiet cafe in Manhattan for their meeting, deliberately avoiding any place in Brooklyn that might risk the girls seeing them together. She arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy while keeping her back against the wall, a habit developed from years of facing challenges head-on. Eduardo entered precisely on time, his corporate armor slightly softened by casual clothes. He'd traded his usual suit for dark jeans and a grey sweater, though Clara noticed he still wore his expensive Italian leather shoes. Thank you for meeting me, he said, remaining standing until she nodded toward the opposite chair. Some courtesies, it seemed, he hadn't forgotten. I brought these. Clara placed a manila envelope on the table. Recent photos, school reports, medical history, things you should know. Eduardo's hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope. His breath caught at the first photo, the twins at their recent school concert, Emily at the piano while Sophia played violin. They're musical, he whispered. Sophia started violin 2 years ago. Emily prefers piano, though she's also taking dance classes. Clara watched his reactions carefully. They're both gifted academically, especially in mathematics and languages. Like my mother, Eduardo said softly. She was a language professor before retiring. A waitress approached, breaking the moment. They ordered coffee. Clara noticed he still took his black with 1 sugar, while she had long since switched to herbal tea. Tell me about them, Eduardo requested after the waitress left. Please. Anything you're willing to share. Clara considered her words carefully. Emily is our serious one, methodical, thoughtful, always planning. Sophia's more spontaneous. She laughs easily and makes friends wherever she goes. But they're both kind, Eduardo. So incredibly kind. Despite everything they've been through. Despite what I did. Because of what they've been through, Clara corrected. How said they understand empathy because they know what it means to need it? Eduardo set the photos down, his face tight with emotion. I have no excuse for leaving the way I did, for being unreachable when you tried to tell me about the pregnancy. I don't want excuses. Clara's voice was firm. I want to know why you're here now. Really here, not just feeling guilty, because seeing them, even from a distance, showed me everything that's been missing from my life. He met her eyes directly. I've achieved every professional goal I set, made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But my apartment feels empty, my success feels hollow, and until I saw them on those steps I didn't understand why. They're not a cure for your midlife crisis, Eduardo. No, they're not, he agreed. They're my daughters, my responsibility, a gift I didn't deserve but want desperately to be worthy of. Their drinks arrived, giving Clara a moment to study him. The ambitious young executive she'd married was still there in his bearing, his careful choice of words. But there was something else now, a humility that seemed genuine. If, and it's a big if, we move forward with this, there will be rules, Clara said finally. Non-negotiable ones. Eduardo nodded, reaching for a leather portfolio he'd brought. I assumed as much. I've prepared some suggestions for how we might proceed, but I want your input on everything. Clara raised an eyebrow at his preparedness. Some things hadn't changed. Eduardo had always approached challenges with careful planning. First, she began, no promises to the girls that you can't absolutely keep. No scheduled visits that get cancelled for business. No half-hearted commitments. Agreed. I've already delegated most of my daily operations to my VP. The company can run without my constant presence. Second, you follow my lead on timing and introductions. If I say it's too much too fast, you back off immediately. Of course. He made notes as she spoke. What about financial support? They don't need your money. I've provided everything they need. I know you have, Eduardo said quietly. But I'd like to set up trust funds for their education and future, not to buy their affection, but because it's my responsibility as their father. Clara considered this. The girls' education was secure. She'd made sure of that, but having additional resources for their future couldn't hurt. Third rule, she continued. No undermining my authority as their mother. No trying to win them over with expensive gifts or special treats when I've said no to something. Never, Eduardo promised. You've raised them beautifully, Clara. I wouldn't dream of interfering with that. She pulled out her phone, pulling up a recent video of the girls making breakfast for her birthday. Their laughter filled the quiet cafe as they attempted to flip pancakes, getting more batter on themselves than on the plates. Eduardo watched, transfixed, as Sophia helped Emily clean up their mess, both girls giggling uncontrollably. They take care of each other, he observed. How they're all each other has had, Clara reminded him. Well, them and their grandmother. Mum's been our rock through everything. How is Rose? Still making her famous Sunday dinners? Every week. The girls help her cook now. Clara paused, then added, Your mother is welcome to meet them too, eventually. They should know their Cuban heritage. Eduardo's eyes widened in surprise. Really? Mama would love that. She asks about them constantly since I told her. You told her. The night I discovered they existed, she was disappointed in my past choices, to put it mildly. Clara almost smiled, remembering Maria Martinez's formidable personality. Some things don't change. Speaking of change, Eduardo pulled out his phone, showing her photos of a brownstone. This is the house I bought. I know it seems sudden, but I wanted to be close enough to be truly present in their lives, if you allow it. Clara studied the photos. The house was lovely, but not ostentatious, with a small backyard and what looked like good security. 3 blocks from us. Is that too close? I can look elsewhere. No, it's practical. If we do this, having you nearby would make shared time easier. Clara took a deep breath. But Eduardo, you need to understand something. These first meetings, and they're going to be hard, the girls will have questions, difficult ones, about where you've been, why you left, why you're back now. I know. His voice was thick with emotion. I'll answer honestly, take full responsibility for my choices. They deserve that much. Clara gathered the photos, carefully replacing them in the envelope. Jay, I need time to prepare them, to explain things in a way they'll understand. Give me 2 weeks. Of course, whatever you think is best. He hesitated, then added, Thank you, Clara, for even considering this, for raising our daughters to be such amazing little people, for not hating me, even though you have every right to. I don't hate you, Eduardo. I stopped feeling anything for you a long time ago. This isn't about us. It's about Emily and Sophia. But as she left the cafe, Clara knew that wasn't entirely true. Seeing him today, witnessing his genuine remorse and desire to change, had awakened feelings she'd thought long buried. Not love, she wasn't that naive, but something, hope, perhaps. Hope that their daughters might have the father they deserved, even if it came years later than it should have. Clara spent a week watching her daughters closely, looking for the right moment to introduce the subject of their father. She noticed things she'd overlooked before, how Emily would linger over father-daughter pictures in her friends' homes, how Sophia would grow quiet when classmates discussed weekend plans with their dads. Saturday morning found them in their familiar routine, pancakes shaped like animals, cartoons on the TV, and the lazy comfort of weekend togetherness. Clara knew this peaceful moment might be their last uncomplicated one for a while. Girls, she called softly, turning off the television, can we talk about something important? Emily and Sophia exchanged glances. That twin telepathy Clara had never quite understood passing between them. They settled on either side of her on the couch, instinctively sensing the gravity of the moment. You know how we've talked about families being different, Clara began, her heart pounding. How some kids live with just their mum, some with their dad, some with grandparents. Sophia nodded. Like Michael in my class. He lives with his dad and stepmom. Right. Clara took a deep breath. And you know that your dad hasn't been part of our family, but that doesn't mean he doesn't exist. Emily sat up straighter, her dark eyes, so like Eduardo's, suddenly intense. Did something happen to him? No, sweetie. Actually, Clara pulled out her phone, bringing up a recent photo of Eduardo she'd taken secretly at the cafe. This is your father. His name is Eduardo Martinez. The twins leaned forward, studying the image with matching expressions of wonder and uncertainty. Sophia reached out to touch the screen, her finger tracing Eduardo's face. He looks like Emily when she's thinking hard, Sophia observed. Emily remained silent, her little face scrunched in concentration. Finally, she asked the question Clara had been dreading. Why didn't he want us? Oh, baby. Clara pulled her daughter close. It's complicated. Your father didn't know about you when he left. I tried to tell him, but he was unavailable. But he knows now. Sophia's voice was small. Yes, he knows now. He saw you recently, from a distance, and he wants very much to meet you both. Clara watched their reactions carefully, but only if you want to, and only when you're ready. The girls absorbed this information in their own ways. Sophia peppered her with questions. What did he do for work? Did he like music too? Where did he live? Emily, however, grew increasingly quiet. Emmy, Clara prompted gently. What are you thinking, sweetheart? Will he leave again? The question came out barely above a whisper. Clara gathered both girls into her arms, choosing her words carefully. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. You have me, always and forever. Nothing and no one can change that. And if your father comes into your lives, it has to be with the understanding that he's committed to staying. Does Grandma Rose know? Sophia asked. Yes, and she supports whatever decision we make as a family. Clara smoothed Sophia's curls. Your father's mother, your other grandmother, Maria, would like to meet you too, eventually. This sparked new interest, especially from Emily. We have another grandmother. Yes, she lives in Miami. She's Cuban, which is part of your heritage. The girls processed this information, their expressions shifting between excitement and apprehension. Clara gave them time, answering questions when they asked but not pushing. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice stronger. Can we think about it? Of course you can. Clara kissed her forehead. There's no rush. We can take all the time you need. Sophia, ever the more impulsive one, had another question. What should we call him? That's something you can decide together when and if you meet him. Clara kept her tone neutral. For now, how about we make some hot chocolate and talk about how you're feeling? As she prepared their favorite comfort drink, Clara watched the twins whispering together on the couch. They had their own secret language, developed in the womb and strengthened through 7 years of being each other's constant companion. The doorbell rang, making them all jump. It was Rose, arriving for her usual weekend visit. One look at Clara's face told her what had happened. "Well," Rose said, pulling both girls into a warm hug, "this seems like a day for my special triple chocolate cookies. Who wants to help me bake?" The familiar activity gave the girls something to focus on, besides the morning's revelation. As they measured ingredients and mixed dough, Clara heard snippets of conversation between them and their grandmother, questions they might have been too afraid to ask their mother. "Did you know our dad?" Sophia asked, dusting flour from her nose. "I did," Rose answered honestly. "He was different back then. Younger, less focused on work." "Was he nice?" Emily's question was barely audible. "He was very nice." Rose met Clara's eyes across the kitchen. "He made your mother laugh a lot, and he had a good heart, even if he lost his way for a while." Later that evening, after the cookies had been eaten and Rose had gone home, Clara found the twins in their shared bedroom. They'd pulled out their memory box, a collection of special items they'd gathered over the years. "What are you looking for?" she asked, sitting on Emily's bed. "Pictures," Sophia explained, "to see if we look like him." Clara reached for her phone again, pulling up more photos Eduardo had shared from his youth, pictures with his mother, childhood snapshots, even one from their wedding day. "You both have his smile," she told them. "And Emily, you have his eyes and his focus. Sophia, you have his love of languages and his mother's musical talent." The girls studied the photos intently, perhaps seeing themselves in a new light. Finally, Emily looked up at Clara. "Can we meet him?" she asked. "Just once, to see." Sophia nodded in agreement, though Clara noticed both girls instinctively moved closer to her, seeking reassurance. "Are you sure you're ready?" Clara asked, wrapping an arm around each of them. "We want to try," Sophia said. "Together, together," Emily echoed, squeezing her sister's hand. Clara hugged them close, breathing in their familiar scent of shampoo and childhood. "Then we'll try, together." That night, after the girls were asleep, Clara sent Eduardo a text. "They want to meet you, but we do this slowly, carefully. First meeting should be brief, somewhere neutral and comfortable for them." His response came quickly. "Thank you. I'll follow your lead completely. Just tell me when and where." Clara stood in the doorway of the twins' room watching them sleep. Emily had kicked off her covers as usual, while Sophia clutched her stuffed elephant. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. She prayed she was making the right decision in opening their hearts to the possibility of a father's love. But as she remembered their questions, their need to understand where they came from, she knew this was necessary. They deserved the chance to know their father, and Eduardo deserved the chance to prove he could be the parent they needed. The Brooklyn Children's Museum seemed like neutral ground for their first meeting. Clara chose it carefully, public enough to feel safe, private enough in its many nooks to allow genuine interaction, and filled with enough activities to ease any awkward moments. "Remember," Clara knelt before the twins in the museum lobby, adjusting their matching red sweaters, "we can leave any time you want. Just squeeze my hand twice, okay?" Emily nodded solemnly, while Sophia bounced on her toes, a mix of nerves and excitement, making her more energetic than usual. They'd spent the morning picking out their outfits, wanting to look special, but not too formal. Clara spotted Eduardo first, standing near the ticket counter. He'd clearly made an effort to dress casually in jeans and a navy sweater, though she noticed his hands fidgeting with his watch, a nervous habit from their married days. "Girls," she said softly, "are you ready?" The twins gripped each other's hands, then reached for Clara with their free ones. Together they approached Eduardo, whose face showed a mix of hope and terror Clara had never seen before. "Emily, Sophia," his voice was gentle as he knelt to their level, "I'm very happy to meet you." The girls studied him with matching intensity. Sophia, typically the braver one, spoke first. "You look like your picture." A surprised laugh escaped Eduardo. "I hope that's good. Your eyes are like mine," Emily observed quietly, unconsciously touching the corner of her eye. "Yes, they are." Eduardo's voice caught slightly. "I hear you play piano, Emily." "And Sophia, you play violin." The girls nodded, still holding hands but looking more curious than afraid. Clara watched as Eduardo carefully maintained his distance, letting them set the pace. "Would you like to see the new music exhibit?" he asked. "I heard they have instruments from around the world that visitors can try." This sparked genuine interest. Both girls loved music, and the prospect of trying new instruments overcame some of their initial shyness. As they walked toward the exhibit, Clara noticed how Eduardo unconsciously matched his pace to the girls, shorter steps. He answered their tentative questions with patience, never pushing for more interaction than they offered. The music exhibit proved to be a perfect choice. Sophia gravitated toward a collection of Latin American instruments, her eyes lighting up at the sight of a Cuban tray guitar. My father, your grandfather, used to play one of those, Eduardo told her, watching as she carefully strummed the strings. He taught me a little before he passed away. Can you show me? Sophia asked, offering him the instrument. Eduardo glanced at Clara, who nodded slightly. He took the trez, positioning his fingers carefully, and played a simple Cuban melody. Both girls watched, fascinated, as the familiar yet foreign music filled their corner of the exhibit. That's pretty, Emily said, moving closer. What's it called? Guantanamera, Eduardo explained. It's a very famous Cuban song. My mother, your Abuela Maria, used to sing it to me when I was little. Will she sing it to us? Sophia asked innocently. Eduardo's hands stilled on the strings. She'd love to, if you'd like to meet her someday. The next hour passed quickly as they explored more instruments. Eduardo showed remarkable patience, listening to their attempts at playing various instruments and sharing small stories about his own childhood musical experiences. When they reached the science section, Emily's eyes lit up at the engineering display. Look, she pointed to a bridge-building station. Can we try? Of course. Eduardo followed her lead, helping when asked, but mostly watching as she methodically tested different construction methods. She's like you, Clara said softly, standing beside him while the girls worked, always planning, analyzing. Sophia reminds me of my mother, Eduardo replied, that same spark of joy in her eyes. They watched as Sophia encouraged her sister to try a different approach to the bridge design, the two girls working together seamlessly. They're so connected, Eduardo observed, so in tune with each other. They've always been that way, Clara explained. For even before they could talk, they had their own way of communicating. The morning passed more smoothly than any of them had expected. The girls gradually relaxed, asking more questions and even sharing small stories about school and their activities. During a quiet moment in the butterfly garden, Emily finally asked the question Clara had been waiting for. Why didn't you try to find us before? Eduardo sat on a nearby bench, giving the question the weight it deserved. I made a very big mistake, he said honestly. I was so focused on work, on success, that I forgot what really matters in life. I didn't know your mother was going to have you, but that's no excuse. I should have stayed in touch, should have been reachable. Sophia joined her sister, both girls listening intently. Are you sorry? She asked. More sorry than I've ever been about anything in my life, Eduardo answered, his voice thick with emotion. Missing your first steps, first words, first days of school. I can never get those moments back, but if you'll let me, I'd like to be here for all the moments to come. The girls exchanged one of their silent conversations. Then Emily spoke again. Do you promise not to disappear again? I promise. Eduardo met their eyes steadily. I've moved close by, changed my work schedule, and made sure nothing will keep me from being there for you, if and when you want me to be. Clara checked her watch, noting they'd been at the museum for nearly 3 hours. Girls, we should probably think about heading home soon. Grandma Rose is coming for lunch, remember? To her surprise, both girls looked disappointed. Can we show him one more thing? Sophia pleaded. The space exhibit. After getting Clara's approval, they led Eduardo through the space display, explaining their favorite parts with growing animation. Clara hung back slightly, watching as her daughters cautiously began to connect with their father. As they prepared to leave, Eduardo knelt again to the girl's level. Thank you for giving me a chance to meet you, he said softly. Would it be okay if we did this again sometime? The twins looked to Clara first, a gesture that made her heart swell with love and pride. At her encouraging nod, they turned back to Eduardo. Yes, Emily said, but slowly. As slowly as you need, Eduardo assured them. We can take all the time you want. In the cab ride home, the girls were unusually quiet, processing the morning's events. You okay? Clara asked, squeezing their hands. He's nice, Sophia said finally. Different from what I imagined. More real, Emily added thoughtfully. Clara understood what they meant. Eduardo had transformed from an abstract concept into a flesh and blood person, someone who shared their features, their talents, their blood. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Clara received a text from Eduardo. Thank you for today. They're more amazing than I ever could have imagined. I know I have to earn their trust and yours. I won't let any of you down again. Clara looked in on her sleeping daughters, noting how they'd pushed their beds closer together, seeking comfort in each other's presence after an emotionally challenging day. The future was uncertain, but watching her daughters take their first careful steps toward knowing their father, Clara felt cautiously hopeful. They were resilient, these girls she'd raised alone, strong enough to open their hearts to the possibility of more love, wise enough to protect themselves if that love proved unreliable. 2 weeks after the museum visit, Clara noticed subtle changes in her daughter's behavior. Emily had taken to practicing piano with new dedication, while Sophia peppered her Spanish teacher with questions about Cuban culture. Small signs that Eduardo's presence had already begun to influence their lives. "Mummy," Sophia called from the breakfast table one morning. "Can we see him again?" Clara looked up from packing their lunchboxes. "Your father?" Both girls nodded, Emily adding, "He said we could go slowly. And is this what you both want?" Another twin conference passed between them through silent looks before Emily spoke. "Maybe he could come to my piano recital next week, if you think it's okay." Clara's heart tightened. The recital was a big step, a public event where other parents would see Eduardo, where questions would inevitably arise. But denying the request would only hurt the tentative trust they were building. "I'll ask him," she promised. "But remember, he might have work commitments." To her surprise, Eduardo's response came within minutes of her text. "I'll clear my entire schedule. Nothing is more important." The day of the recital arrived bright and crisp. Clara helped Emily into her new blue dress, while Sophia offered enthusiastic support from the sidelines. They were running slightly late when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it." Sophia raced downstairs before Clara could stop her. Eduardo stood on the porch, holding 2 small bouquets, one of white roses, one of pink. He'd dressed appropriately in a sport coat and slacks, nothing too formal, but respectful of the occasion. "Tom, these are for you." He offered the pink roses to Emily. "For good luck today." Emily accepted them shyly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Thank you. And these," he handed the white roses to Sophia, "are because every performer needs someone cheering them on backstage." Sophia's face lit up at being included. "Can I put them in my room?" "Let's get them in water quickly," Clara intervened. "We need to leave in 5 minutes." As she helped the girls with their flowers, Clara noticed Eduardo taking in the details of their home, the family photos on the walls, the twins, artwork displayed proudly, the comfortable mix of practical and personal that made up their life. The recital hall at the girls' school was already filling with families when they arrived. Clara felt the curious glances as Eduardo helped the twins with their coats, heard the whispered questions about the handsome man accompanying the Harrison family. "Emily Harrison," the music teacher called. "You're up in 3 performers." Emily's nervousness showed in her tight grip on Clara's hand. To everyone's surprise, she reached for Eduardo's as well, squeezing it once before heading backstage. They found seats in the middle section, Sophia between Clara and Eduardo. As they waited, Sophia whispered explanations about the other performers, about Emily's preparation, about their music teacher's strict standards. When Emily took the stage, her blue dress matching her serious expression, Clara felt Eduardo tense beside her. Their daughter looked so small against the grand piano, but her posture was perfect as she began to play. The piece was challenging, Beethoven's Für Elise, but Emily had practiced for months. Her small fingers moved confidently over the keys, each note clear and precise. Clara glanced at Eduardo and saw tears in his eyes. "She's amazing," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Sophia beamed proudly. She practiced every day, even when she was tired. After the performance, as other parents offered congratulations, Emily made her way directly to them. "Did I do okay?" "You were wonderful, baby." Clara hugged her tightly. "Perfect," Eduardo added softly. "Your grandfather would have loved to hear you play." Emily's eyes widened with interest. "He played piano too." "He did, and he taught music before coming to America." Eduardo seemed to make a decision. "I have some recordings of him playing, if you'd like to hear them sometime." Both girls looked to Clara, who nodded. "Maybe next weekend. We could have lunch at Eduardo's new house, see how he's settled in." The suggestion earned her grateful looks from both Eduardo and the twins. They spent a few more minutes accepting congratulations before heading out, the girls unusually quiet on the drive home. "Would you like to come in?" Clara found herself offering as they pulled up to the brownstone. "Just for a few minutes." Eduardo accepted, following them into the warm kitchen where Rose was preparing dinner. The grandmother's eyebrows rose at his presence, but she greeted him cordially. "The girls have something to show you," Clara explained, watching as Emily and Sophia led Eduardo to their music room, really just a converted sunroom with their instruments and a small electronic keyboard. Through the door, she could hear Sophia demonstrating her progress on violin, while Emily showed Eduardo her practice pieces. Rose joined her in watching the scene. "He's trying," the older woman observed. "Yes," Clara agreed, he is. "And you? How are you handling all this?" Clara considered the question carefully. "It's strange, seeing him with them, seeing parts of him in them that I never noticed before. It makes me happy for them, but it also hurts. All those years they missed." "You can't change the past," Rose reminded her gently, "but you're giving them a chance at a better future. That takes strength." Later, after Eduardo had left and the girls were getting ready for bed, Clara found Emily sitting at her keyboard with headphones on, playing softly. "New piece?" Clara asked, removing one earphone. Emily nodded. "Dad said his father used to play it. It's called Claire de Lune." The casual use of Dad caught Clara off guard, but she kept her voice steady. "It's a beautiful piece. Very challenging. I want to learn it," Emily said determinedly. "To surprise him." Clara kissed her daughter's forehead, recognizing Eduardo's focus in her set expression. "Then you will, baby. Just give it time." In her own room that night, Clara received a text from Eduardo. "Thank you for today, for letting me be there, for giving me a chance to know them." She started to type a polite acknowledgement, then changed her mind. "They're starting to let you in. Don't mess this up, Eduardo." His response was immediate. "I won't. They're everything to me now. Everything I never knew I was missing." Clara set her phone aside, thinking about the day's events. The recital had been more than just Emily's performance. It was their first public appearance as something resembling a family. Not a traditional one, perhaps, but one that was slowly, carefully finding its own way. The Sunday afternoon sun warmed the brownstone's facade as Clara walked with the twins to Eduardo's new home. The girls had dressed themselves with unusual care, Emily in a navy dress, Sophia in a flowered jumpsuit, and spent the morning practicing the few Spanish phrases they'd learned. "Remember," Clara reminded them as they approached the steps, "this is just lunch. If you feel uncomfortable at any time, we squeeze your hand twice." The girls finished in unison, exchanging amused glances. Eduardo opened the door before they could ring the bell, his expression a mix of nervousness and joy. "Welcome." He stepped back, gesturing them inside. "I hope you like Cuban food." The house smelled amazing. Garlic, cumin, and something sweet wafting from the kitchen. Eduardo had clearly put thought into making the space welcoming for children. The formal living room had been transformed with comfortable seating and a cabinet filled with games and books. "Is that you?" Sophia pointed to a photo on the wall, a young Eduardo with a distinguished-looking couple. "Yes, with my parents at my college graduation." Eduardo moved closer. "That's your grandfather Antonio and your abuela Maria." Emily studied the photo intently. "Abuela looks like Sophia when she smiles." "She does," Eduardo agreed softly. "Would you like to see some more family photos while lunch finishes cooking?" The girls nodded eagerly, following him to a leather album on the coffee table. Clara watched as Eduardo shared stories about his childhood in Miami, his father's music career, his mother's teaching days. The twins absorbed every detail, clearly hungry for this connection to their heritage. "And this," Eduardo pulled out a smaller photo, "is your great-grandmother's recipe book. She wrote down all our family's traditional dishes." "Is that what you're cooking?" Sophia asked, sniffing the air appreciatively. "Ropa vieja. It was my favorite growing up. And there's flan for dessert if you like sweet things." "They love anything sweet," Clara commented, speaking for the first time since entering. "How they get that from you?" Eduardo's eyes met hers, remembering shared desserts and late-night ice cream runs during their marriage. The moment passed quickly as Emily discovered a piano in the adjacent room. "You have one too?" She gravitated toward it naturally. "I thought—" Eduardo hesitated. "I thought maybe you could practice here sometimes, if you wanted." "And Sophia, there's a music stand for your violin, though we'd need to get one to keep here." The implications of his words, creating space for them in his home, planning for future visits, hung in the air. Clara watched her daughters' reactions carefully, but they seemed pleased by the idea. A timer chimed from the kitchen, and Eduardo excused himself to check on lunch. Clara followed, leaving the girls exploring the piano. "For you've thought this through," she observed, watching him move confidently around the kitchen. "I want them to feel comfortable here," he admitted, checking the rice, "to have their own space, their own things. But I know it's a lot. If it's too much too soon, it's fine, Clara interrupted. They need this to know you're committed, that you're making room for them in your life. Eduardo paused in his preparations. Not just room, Clara. They're becoming the center of my life. Before she could respond, Sophia appeared in the doorway. Can we help set the table? Lunch proved to be a success. The girls loved the Cuban dishes, especially after Eduardo explained the stories behind each recipe. He'd even prepared some simpler options in case the traditional food wasn't to their taste, but they weren't needed. Abuela Maria called while I was cooking, Eduardo mentioned casually. She'd love to video chat with you after lunch if you're interested, but only if you feel ready. Another silent twin conference passed between the girls before Emily spoke. Can Mom stay with us? Of course, Eduardo assured them. Whatever makes you comfortable. Maria Martinez's face filled Eduardo's tablet screen shortly after lunch, her elegant features softening at the sight of her granddaughters. Miss Angelis, she breathed. Oh, you are even more beautiful than your father described. The initial shyness melted quickly as Maria asked about their music, their school, their interests. She was particularly delighted when Sophia attempted a few Spanish phrases. Your pronunciation is perfect, mi amor, she encouraged. You have your grandfather's ear for language. The conversation flowed easily, Maria sharing stories about Eduardo's childhood that had both girls giggling. Clara noticed how she included her in the conversation, asking about the twins' early years and complimenting her parenting. Next time I visit New York, Maria said as they prepared to end the call, perhaps we could cook together. I could teach you some family recipes. The girls' enthusiastic response brought tears to the grandmother's eyes. After goodbyes were exchanged, Eduardo suggested showing them the small backyard he was planning to transform into a garden. We could plant flowers, Sophia suggested excitedly, and vegetables like in Grandma Rose's garden. Whatever you'd like, Eduardo agreed. It's your space too. As the afternoon wore on, Clara noticed both girls becoming more relaxed, more natural in their interactions with Eduardo. They showed him their recent school projects on his tablet, accepted his help with some challenging homework, and even shared jokes from their favorite TV show. When it was time to leave, both girls hugged Eduardo goodbye first. He held them perhaps a moment longer than necessary, his eyes meeting Clara's over their heads with profound gratitude. Thank you for lunch, Emily said formally, and for the piano. You're welcome here anytime, Eduardo told them. Both of you, all of you, he added, including Clara in his glance. Walking home, Sophia slipped her hand into Clara's. Dad's house is nice. It is, Clara agreed, noting the casual use of Dad from her too now. Did you have a good time? Yes, Emily said thoughtfully. It felt right, like we belonged there too. Clara squeezed their hands, emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Her daughters were forging a relationship with their father, creating new memories to fill the void of the missing years. It was what she'd hoped for, even if it complicated their carefully ordered life. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, she received a photo from Eduardo, the twins at his piano, their faces intent as they explored the keys together. The caption read, "Thank you for giving us this chance. They make everything in my life brighter." Clara saved the photo, understanding that their family was evolving into something new, not the traditional unit she'd once dreamed of, but perhaps something equally valuable, something built on choice rather than obligation, on earned trust rather than assumed rights. The call came during Clara's morning meeting, Emily's school number flashing urgently on her phone screen. Her daughter had fallen during dance class, possibly broken her arm. Clara was gathering her things to leave when her assistant appeared with another message. Eduardo had already been notified as the secondary emergency contact. By the time Clara reached the school, she found Eduardo in the nurse's office, sitting beside a tearful Emily, while Sophia hovered anxiously nearby. He'd beaten her there, his office being closer to the school. "Mommy!" Emily reached for her with her good arm, while her other arm was carefully supported in a makeshift sling. "I'm here, baby." Clara knelt beside her daughter, meeting Eduardo's concerned eyes over Emily's head. "What happened?" "A bad landing during ballet," Eduardo explained. "The nurse thinks it might be broken. I called Dr. Chen. She can see us right away at the pediatric urgent care." Clara blinked, surprised he'd remembered their pediatrician's name from the medical information she'd shared. "Thank you. I can take it from here. Please," Eduardo interrupted softly. "Let me help. Let me be here for her, for both of them." Emily's small voice settled the matter. "Can Dad come too?" The urgent care waiting room was mercifully quiet. as they checked in. Sophia sat between her parents, holding her sister's good hand and telling stories to distract her from the pain. Clara noticed how Eduardo seemed to know exactly what to say to keep both girls calm. "Remember when I broke my arm playing baseball?" he shared. "I was about your age. Abuela Maria made me so much flan that week that I couldn't look at dessert for a month." This earned a small giggle from Emily, even as tears of pain still shone in her eyes. Dr. Chen confirmed their fears, a clean break that would require a cast. As they waited for the orthopedist, Emily's fear returned. "Will I still be able to play piano?" she asked tremulously. "The cast will only be on for 6 weeks," Eduardo assured her. "Just enough time to practice your left-hand pieces." In fact, he pulled out his phone, quickly searching something. "There are some beautiful piano pieces written specifically for left hand. We could learn them together." Clara watched as her daughter's expression brightened slightly at this suggestion. Eduardo had known exactly what Emily needed to hear, not false promises, but a practical solution and a way to continue her beloved music. The casting process was difficult. Emily cried despite their combined efforts to distract her, and Sophia grew increasingly distressed at her twins' pain. To everyone's surprise, it was Eduardo who found the solution. "Did I ever tell you about the time your abuelo Antonio played a whole concert with a broken finger?" He launched into a story about his father's determination to perform despite an injury, complete with dramatic gestures that had both girls giggling despite their stress. When it came time to choose the cast color, Emily picked blue, the same shade as the dress from her recital. The orthopedist suggested they all sign it, and Eduardo produced a silver marker from his briefcase. "Always prepared," he explained, when Clara raised an eyebrow. Sophia insisted on drawing butterflies alongside her signature, while Clara added hearts around her name. Eduardo wrote something in Spanish that made Emily smile through her tears. "What does it say?" Sophia asked. "Time for my brave musician. Your music comes from your heart, not just your hands," Eduardo translated softly. The day had turned to evening by the time they left the hospital. Emily was tired and sore despite the pain medication, and Sophia was emotionally exhausted from worrying about her sister. "Let me drive you home," Eduardo offered. "You've got a lot to carry with the prescriptions and care instructions." At home, he helped get Emily settled on the couch, while Clara prepared her pain medication. Sophia curled up next to her sister, their usual twin instinct to stay close, even stronger in times of stress. "The school emailed their assignments," Eduardo mentioned. "I can help Emily with writing until she gets used to using her left hand." Clara looked up from measuring the medicine. "You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "Please, Clara, let me be their father, not just for the fun moments, but for this too." Looking at him, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, silver marker stains on his fingers from decorating Emily's cast. Clara saw how much he'd changed. The ambitious executive who'd left her was gone, replaced by a man who'd dropped everything to sit in a hospital with his daughter. "Okay," she agreed. "But we need to set up a schedule, work around their activities and your meetings." "Already handled," he assured her. "I've cleared my calendar for the next 2 weeks, except for essential meetings, and those I can take virtually from here, if needed." A small sound from the living room interrupted them, Emily trying to shift position without jostling her arm. They both moved immediately to help, working together instinctively to adjust pillows and make her comfortable. "Will you stay for dinner?" Sophia asked Eduardo hopefully. "We can watch a movie with Emmy while she rests." Eduardo looked to Clara for permission. At her slight nod, he smiled. "I'd love to. Maybe we can introduce you to your abuelo's favorite old movies." Later that night, after Eduardo had left and the girls were finally asleep in their room, Sophia having insisted on pushing their beds together so she could be closer to her sister, Clara found herself reviewing the day's events. Eduardo had shown up, not just physically but emotionally. He'd known what their daughters needed. Emily's fear about piano, Sophia's need to feel helpful, both girls' desire for distraction and comfort. He'd been the father they deserved, the partner in parenting she'd once hoped he'd be. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Thank you for letting me be there today. I've set up delivery of some easy prep meals for the next week, and I found some piano pieces Emily can practice one-handed. Call if you need anything, day or night." Clara smiled despite herself, remembering how the old Eduardo would have handled a crisis, by throwing money at it and returning to work. This new version was different, present, involved, changed. As she checked on the girls one last time, Clara realized their family dynamic had shifted again. Today's crisis had proven Eduardo's commitment wasn't just for the easy moments. He was all in, ready to face challenges and midnight fears, ready to be the father he should have been all along. 2 weeks after Emily's accident, Clara's carefully structured routine had transformed into something new. Eduardo had become a constant presence, arriving each morning to help Emily get ready for school, staying late to assist with homework done left-handed, and filling the gaps in between with an attentiveness that still surprised Clara. "Dad found a computer program that turns my voice into written words," Emily announced over breakfast, "so I can keep writing my stories without typing." Clara looked up from packing their lunches. "He did? And he's teaching me to write with my left hand," Emily continued, demonstrating her wobbly but improving penmanship. "He says Leonardo da Vinci was left-handed too." Sophia, not to be left out, added, "He's helping me practice violin after school while you're at work, and Abuela Maria sent us Cuban dessert recipes to try this weekend." The changes went beyond practical help. Eduardo had somehow slipped into their daily life with an ease that both comforted and unsettled Clara. He knew the girls, schedules, their preferences, their little anxieties. He'd learned which Princess Sophia preferred in their bedtime stories and how Emily liked her sandwiches cut. The doorbell rang, Eduardo arriving for his morning shift. But today, he wasn't alone. "Abuela!" The twins' excited shouts filled the house as Maria Martinez stepped into their kitchen, arms full of bags and boxes. "My darlings." Maria embraced both girls carefully, mindful of Emily's cast. "I hope you don't mind the surprise, Clara. When Eduardo told me about Emily's arm, I had to come see my granddaughters." Clara found herself wrapped in an unexpected hug as well. "Of course not. You're always welcome. I brought ingredients," Maria announced, unpacking her bags. "Today, we learn to make proper Cuban comfort food. The healing power of Abuela's cooking is not to be underestimated." The kitchen soon filled with delicious smells and happy chatter as Maria taught the girls to make picadillo and plantains. Clara watched in amazement as her daughters absorbed their grandmother's instructions in both cooking and Spanish, their faces glowing with pride at each small success. "You've done an incredible job with them," Maria said quietly, joining Clara at the counter. "They're such beautiful, confident girls. Eduardo was a fool to miss so much. He's making up for it now." Clara found herself defending him. "Yes, he is." Maria's knowing smile held years of maternal wisdom, and not just with the girls, I think. Before Clara could respond, Eduardo returned from a quick work call. He moved easily through their kitchen, helping Sophia reach a high shelf while simultaneously checking Emily's cast for any signs of discomfort. "Mijo," Maria called, "come taste this sauce. Tell me if it needs more garlic." The scene struck Clara suddenly, her daughters learning family recipes from their Cuban grandmother, while their father offered encouraging words in Spanish. It was everything she'd once dreamed of giving them, coming true in an unexpected way. Later that afternoon, as the girls napped off their food coma, Maria cornered Clara in the living room. "When Eduardo told me about leaving you," she began directly, "I was ashamed, not just of his actions, but of my own failure to raise him better, to teach him that love matters more than success." "You can't blame yourself." "No," Maria's eyebrow rose. "A mother always feels responsible for her children's mistakes, just as you would feel responsible if Emily or Sophia made poor choices someday." Clara couldn't argue with that logic. But watching him now," Maria continued, "I see the man I always hoped he would become, the father he should have been from the start. Love has finally taught him what I could not." The conversation was interrupted by sounds from upstairs, the twins awakening from their nap. Eduardo immediately moved to help Emily, who still struggled with stairs while adjusting to her cast. "She doesn't know the songs yet," they heard Sophia explaining to her grandmother. "But Dad's been teaching us Cuban lullabies, the ones you used to sing to him." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Perhaps I could teach them to you properly. If your mother agrees, I could stay for a while, help out while Emily's arm heals." The twins turned hopeful eyes to Clara, who found herself nodding. "We'd love that." "There's a guest room upstairs." "Nonsense," Eduardo interrupted. "Mama will stay at my house. It's bigger, and she can still come here every day to help with the girls." The arrangement was quickly settled, with Maria insisting on making dinner for everyone before leaving. As they ate, Clara watched her daughters soaking in their heritage, asking questions about Cuba, about Eduardo's childhood, about family traditions they were eager to learn. "How will you teach us to make flan next?" Sophia asked her grandmother. "Dad says it's his favorite." "Of course, mi amor, and maybe your mother would like to learn too." Maria's invitation was gentle but clear. Clara was part of this family too, regardless of her past with Eduardo. After dinner, as Eduardo and Maria prepared to leave, Emily spoke up. "Can we have Sunday dinner at Dad's house, like we used to have at Grandma Rose's?" The adults exchanged glances. It was Rose's turn to host their weekly family dinner, a tradition that had sustained them through the years. "Why don't we invite Grandma Rose to join us?" Eduardo suggested. "Both grandmothers together. Double the desserts." The idea delighted the twins, but Clara held her breath. Rose had been their rock, their protector during the hard years. How would she feel about sharing her special time with the family that had once abandoned them? To her surprise, when she called Rose later that night, her mother was enthusiastic. "It's time," Rose said simply. "Time to blend these families, to give the girls all the love that's being offered to them." That night, after the girls were asleep, Clara found herself looking through old photos, Emily and Sophia as babies, as toddlers, growing into the remarkable little people they were becoming. She had protected them fiercely, loved them completely, but perhaps it was time to acknowledge that more love wouldn't diminish what they had built together. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eduardo. "Mama," S settled in. "She's already planning cooking lessons and starting a small herb garden for Cuban recipes. Thank you for welcoming her into their lives." Clara smiled, remembering Maria's words about love teaching what success could not. "The girls are lucky to have her," she replied. "To have all of us." Their family was growing, expanding beyond the tight unit she'd created out of necessity. It was messy and complicated, and beautiful, like all real families were. Eduardo's kitchen buzzed with activity as two grandmothers worked side by side, their different cooking styles blending into an unexpected harmony. Rose's traditional American pot roast shared oven space with Maria's ropa vieja, while the twins flitted between them, absorbing techniques from both cultures. "More garlic," Maria instructed Sophia, who was helping with the black beans. "And a pinch more thyme in the gravy," Rose guided Emily, who had become surprisingly adept at cooking one-handed. Clara stood in the doorway, watching this scene she'd never imagined possible. The past month had transformed their family in ways she was still processing. Eduardo had proven himself not just as a father, but as a son to Rose. Treating her with the same respect and appreciation he showed his own mother. "They work well together," Eduardo's voice came from behind her. He'd been setting up the dining room, making space for their expanded family. "They do," Clara agreed. "Rose is even learning Spanish from your mother. And Mama is desperate for Rose's mac and cheese recipe." Eduardo smiled, watching Sophia taste test something for her Cuban grandmother. "The girls seem happy." "They are." Clara turned to face him. "You've given them something I couldn't. Their heritage, their extended family. You gave them everything that matters." Eduardo countered softly. "I'm just lucky you're letting me add to it now." A small commotion from the kitchen interrupted them. Emily had managed to spill gravy on her cast. Both grandmothers moved to help, but Rose reached her first, cleaning the mess, while Maria distracted Emily with stories about Eduardo's childhood cooking disasters. "Remember when you tried to make paella without me?" Maria teased her son. "The rice was so hard it could have broken windows." The twins giggled, delighted by this image of their father as an imperfect youth. Eduardo played along, describing his culinary failures with dramatic flair that had everyone laughing. "Dinner's ready," Rose announced finally. "Girls, wash your hands." "Yes, Sophia, even if you think they're clean." The dining room table, Eduardo's wedding gift to his parents long ago, had been extended to accommodate their blended family. Clara noticed he'd arranged photos around the room, not just recent ones of the twins and all, but older pictures showing both families' histories. "I hope you don't mind," he said, following her gaze. Mama brought some albums, and Rose shared a few prints. "It's perfect," Clara assured him. "They should see where they come from, all sides of their family." As they settled around the table, Clara observed how naturally everyone had found their places. The twins sat between their grandmothers, while she and Eduardo took the ends. It felt right, somehow, their past and present meeting in this moment. "Before we eat," Maria began, "in our family, we have a tradition of sharing what we're grateful for during special meals." Rose nodded approvingly. "That's a beautiful tradition. Girls, would you like to start?" Sophia spoke first, her natural confidence shining. "I'm grateful for having two grandmas who make the best food in the world. And for Dad teaching us Spanish," Emily added quietly. "And for Mum being the strongest person ever." Clara felt tears prick her eyes as Rose spoke next. I'm grateful for second chances and for seeing my granddaughters surrounded by so much love. I'm grateful, Maria continued, for finding the family I didn't know I was missing and for my son finally learning what truly matters in life. Eduardo's voice was rough with emotion when his turn came. I'm grateful for forgiveness, for the chance to know my amazing daughters, and for the wisdom of both these remarkable grandmothers. All eyes turned to Clara, looking around the table at these faces, her daughters glowing with happiness, the grandmothers who had become unlikely friends, and Eduardo who had transformed from the man who left to the father their children deserved. She felt overwhelmed with emotion. "But I'm grateful," she managed finally, "for the way love can heal, grow, and create something new from what was broken." The meal that followed was filled with stories, laughter, and the blending of cultures. Rose praised Maria's black beans while Maria declared the pot roast perfecto. The twins soaked up every moment, their eyes bright with the joy of having their entire family together. After dinner, Eduardo brought out his father's old guitar, surprising everyone by playing some of the Cuban songs Maria had mentioned. The twins sat at his feet, entranced, while the grandmothers harmonized on familiar choruses. "Your grandfather would be so proud," Maria told the girls, wiping tears from her eyes. "He always said music was the way our family shared love." "Can we learn?" Sophia asked eagerly. "The guitar too, not just piano and violin." "One instrument at a time," Clara laughed, "at least until Emily's cast comes off." "Speaking of which," Eduardo interjected, "I have some news. Dr. Chen called yesterday. The x-rays look good. The cast might be able to come off a week early." Emily's face lit up. "Really? Can I play piano again right away?" "We'll need to do some physical therapy first," Clara cautioned. "To build the strength back up." "I know someone," Maria offered, "a wonderful therapist who works with musicians. She helped Antonio after his hand injury." The evening continued with more music, more stories, more moments of connection. When it was finally time to leave, both grandmothers hugged everyone, making plans for next Sunday's dinner. "My turn to host," Rose insisted. "I need to learn more of these Cuban recipes properly." As Clara helped the sleepy twins with their coats, she overheard Eduardo talking softly with their mothers. "Thank you both," he was saying, "for helping us become a real family." "Me, Joe," Maria replied. "You did the hard part yourself. You opened your heart to love." "And kept it open," Rose added, "even when it wasn't easy." In the car ride home, the twins were unusually quiet, processing the evening's events. Finally, Sophia spoke up. "Mum, is this what having a whole family feels like?" Clara met her daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Say, what do you think?" "I think," Emily answered for her sister, "it feels like our family got bigger but also closer." "Like a puzzle," Sophia added. "All the pieces fitting together," Clara smiled, remembering her own words at dinner about love creating something new from what was broken. Their family wasn't traditional, wasn't what she'd originally planned, but it was real and strong and full of love. 6 months had passed since Emily's broken arm, and the winter sun streamed through the windows of the twins' school auditorium. The holiday concert was about to begin, but this performance held special significance. It would be Emily's first time playing piano publicly since her injury, and Sophia had a violin solo. Clara sat between Eduardo and Rose, with Maria on Eduardo's other side. Both grandmothers clutched programs and tissues, prepared for the emotional moment ahead. The past months had transformed them all, creating a family unit none of them had imagined possible. "They've been practicing so hard," Eduardo whispered, his knee bouncing slightly with nervous energy. He'd spent countless hours helping Emily rebuild her strength, celebrating each small victory as she returned to playing. "They're ready," Clara assured him, surprising herself by placing her hand over his. The gesture felt natural now, like so many other changes in their relationship. The lights dimmed, and Sophia appeared first, her violin tucked confidently under her chin. The piece she'd chosen was Guantanamera, arranged specially by her music teacher to incorporate both classical and Cuban elements. As the familiar melody filled the auditorium, Maria wiped tears from her eyes. "For Abuelo Antonio," Sophia had written in the program notes, "who shared his music with our family." After enthusiastic applause, Emily took the stage. Her piece was more complex, a duet she'd arranged herself, combining elements of Beethoven with a traditional Cuban lullaby Maria had taught them. But she wouldn't be playing alone. Eduardo stood from his seat, straightening his tie before joining their daughter at the piano. This part had been Emily's idea, a father-daughter duet to show how far they'd all come together. As they played, Clara remembered all the moments that had led here. Eduardo's first meeting with the twins at the museum, his steady presence during Emily's injury, Sunday dinners that blended their cultures and hearts, quiet evenings helping with homework, and countless small gestures that proved his commitment to being the father their daughters deserved. The duet ended to thunderous applause, Emily beaming as Eduardo hugged her proudly. Sophia joined them on stage for a bow, the family connection visible to everyone watching. At the reception afterward, Clara overheard snippets of conversation that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "Dad's teaching us to make paella next weekend," Sophia told her friends. "Abuela Maria's coming to my science fair," Emily explained to her teacher. "She's helping me translate my project into Spanish too. Both our grandmas are teaching us to cook," they told anyone who would listen. Cuban food and soul food together. Eduardo found Clara by the refreshment table, handling 2 cups of coffee, one black with sugar for himself, one with cream for her. He still remembered how she took it. "They're amazing," he said softly. "You did such an incredible job with them, Clara. I'll never stop being grateful that you gave me the chance to know them." "They needed you," Clara admitted. "I didn't realize how much until I saw them with you. You're a wonderful father, Eduardo. The man you've become. He's who I always knew you could be." A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with shared understanding of how far they'd come. "Clara," Eduardo began carefully, "I've been thinking—" "Mom." "Dad," Sophia's excited voice interrupted them. "Can we show Abuela Maria and Grandma Rose the new ice cream place? Please." The grandmothers had already been recruited to the cause, both wearing matching expressions of hopeful anticipation. "We should celebrate," Maria insisted. "The girls were wonderful," Rose added. "And it's never too cold for ice cream." Eduardo laughed. "Our mothers have spoken. Shall we?" The ice cream shop was warm and inviting, and they claimed 2 tables pushed together, their usual arrangement for family outings now. The twins sat between their grandmothers, all 4 heads bent together as they debated flavor combinations. Clara watched them, remembering lonely nights when she'd wondered if she was enough for her daughters. Now they had 2 strong grandmothers teaching them their heritage, a father who adorned them, and a family that bridged cultures and past hurts to create something beautiful. "Penny for your thoughts?" Eduardo asked quietly. "I was just thinking about time," she replied. "How it changes things, heals things. A year ago, I never would have imagined this. Regrets?" "No," she said firmly. "Every step led us here. Even the painful ones." Eduardo nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I have something for the girls, for all of us, really." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Inside were papers for a beach house in Miami, close to Maria's home. "For summers," he explained. "School breaks. Time with both their cultures, both sides of their family. If you approve, of course." Clara studied the photos. The house was modest by Eduardo's standards, clearly chosen for comfort rather than show. It had a music room, a kitchen big enough for family cooking lessons, and a garden Maria would love. "The girls will be thrilled," she said finally. "They've been begging to spend more time with Abuela Maria." "And their mother?" Eduardo asked softly. "Will she be comfortable there too?" Clara met his eyes, seeing the question behind the question. Their relationship had evolved over the past months, moving from cautious co-parents to something warmer, though neither had put words to the change. "I think," she said carefully, "that home is wherever our family is together." Eduardo's smile was gentle, understanding. "We've created something special, haven't we? Not what we planned, but maybe better." "Definitely better," Clara agreed, "because it's real, earned, chosen." "Mom, Dad," Emily called. "You have to try this new flavor. Abuela Maria says it tastes just like the ice cream in Cuba." They joined their family, accepting tastes of various flavors and listening to Maria's stories about Cuban ice cream stands. Rose added tales of her own childhood ice cream adventures, while the twins soaked up every word, their heritage enriched by both grandmothers' memories. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and the grandmothers had returned to their respective homes, Clara stood on her front porch with Eduardo. "Thank you," he said suddenly, "for giving me a second chance, for letting me prove I could change, for helping me become the man our daughters deserve." "Thank you," she replied, "for becoming that man, for choosing us over everything else, for making our family whole in a way I never expected." As Eduardo drove home to his brownstone 3 blocks away, Clara thought about their journey. They had all grown, the twins into confident, culturally rich young girls. Eduardo into a devoted father, herself into a woman who could trust again, their mothers into friends who shared grandmothering duties with joy. Their family wasn't traditional, wasn't what she'd once dreamed of, but it was perfect in its own way. Built on love, strengthened by forgiveness, enriched by 2 cultures, and held together by 2 little girls who had enough love in their hearts for all of it. The future would bring new challenges, new growth, new moments to navigate, but they would face it together, as a family who had chosen each other, learned from the past and built something beautiful from what was broken, and that, Clara realized, was the greatest gift of all, the end. At what point in this emotional journey did you feel that Clara and Eduardo really began to rebuild their lost trust? Was it when he dropped everything to be present during Emily's accident, when he moved closer to the family to be a more present father, or perhaps during family Sundays, where cultures mixed and grandmothers became friends? Reflect on how small moments of genuine dedication can heal deep wounds and transform a past of abandonment into a story of redemption, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.